South Africans have been horrified by the story of former Tembisa police officer Rosemary Ndlovu, who is on trial for the murder of 6 of her relatives. She's accused of hiring hitmen to kill her relatives in order for her to claim over R1 million in insurance policies. But how is it possible to repeatedly defraud insurance companies in the way that she apparently has done? Let's hear from Danie from Niekerk, the executive head of financial services at the Indwe group. Danie, it's great to have you with us on the show this morning for some important perspective, I think, on a story that's really made headlines incredibly over the past couple of days, and I'm sure you've been following it as well. What do you make of what's unfolded between 2012 and 2018 with this one person claiming for 6 relatives, including a boyfriend, and getting these insurance payouts of R1.3 million?
Good morning, Michelle, and thank you very much for having me this morning. Michelle, yeah, it's been quite an interesting story, and it created a lot of interest in the industry, especially in the times we are living in with the pandemic. Now, looking at the case and the general arena of insurance, there are so many role players in this. You look at the economy, the clients, financial services providers, and then your industry and your bodies regulating the industry. But in all of this, it creates a very interesting playing field where clients accept or apply for cover to address a certain need. And what we've seen over this past couple of months, is where there's a definite need for clients to stay in the same financial position if a certain loss happens, and then there is application to insurance in the industry.
So are you saying that you've seen a marked increase for applications for insurance in the industry?
Absolutely. I think, considering financial planning in general, there's always been a need from clients to have the correct levels of cover should a loss happen. But, this past 18 months, we were all confronted with death, and we see a definite increase in the need of application to insurance.
Yeah. So I want to talk about this period pre-COVID-19 that relates to this particular case involving Rosemary Ndlovu. So it's between 2012 and 2018 that she cashed in on these insurance policies allegedly after taking out hits on particular family members. Is it possible or let me ask it this way, are red flags raised when one person, say it's me, and I take out a whole range of life insurance policies on a number of people in a short period of time?
So considering the process for application, when any particular client applies for a level of cover between 2 parties, the first thing we as financial planners and insurers are looking at is there a level of insurable interest? Now, insurable interest can be looked at in different ways. There's a level of a loan, any level of debt, financial dependence, and as soon as that information has been given that there is a level of insurable interest, then the application can continue. Now, where the loophole starts to be created is if that information that the client gives the person involved in the application process is misleading or is not correct, and there's a level of non-disclosure, then the process will continue, and then something like this potentially can happen.
Danie, if I were to take out an insurance policy on you, for example, would the financial services company involved need your go-ahead for the insurance policy to be initiated?
It depends on the type of cover you apply for, but in general, yes. So what happens is you get different levels of risk protection covers. Some of them you need to go for medical underwriting, and some of them there's a level of tele-underwriting or no upfront underwriting. So if I apply for cover and you are the insured life, you will need to go through that process by answering medical questions, going for the necessary medical tests, so that particular individual will be fully informed of the process.
And I take it all of these processes that you've just talked about will verify my identity as the insured person?
Absolutely. There's a very strict protocol around this, and, looking at the different pieces of legislation monitoring our industry, there's a very strict process in all of this. You look at the Long-Term Insurance Act, your Short-Term Insurance Act, FASE, TCF, FICA. So there's a range of underlying acts to protect all parties in this process.
Is there a limit to the amount of money someone can be insured for to try and prevent a situation where I'm taking out life insurance on a whole range of people for the purposes of solely of making money?
Absolutely. So there is a set criteria when you start the application process where the risk profile of the individual gets identified, and in that, when you apply for a certain amount of cover, there's certain formulas that determines certain levels of cover that you can apply for. For instance, I apply and I qualify for 5 million in line of my income, then, I will qualify for that. But
Sure.
As soon as, there are different aspects that plays a role where you apply for debt or those type of things, then there's supporting documentation that support that certain level of cover.
So, Danie, were you shocked by the details around this particular case involving Rosemary Ndlovu, where, as I said in our introduction, she claimed for 6 family members, including a boyfriend, in a very short period of time? She got cash payouts after they died, and she claimed from those policies. Because this is not the way that this case was broken, for lack of a better term. It was broken through a sting operation. It wasn't because the financial services sector raised a red flag because this one person apparently had 6 people in her life who were killed quite violently in many occasions and who received payouts.
Yeah, Michelle, looking at the circumstances, life happens, and we especially, again, this past couple of months, see so much heartsore in our country and in the world. So when these things start to happen and people are losing family members, sometimes, you look at it and you think, that person or that family are just having the wrong side of the coin, and these things do happen. But, at some point, the questions do get asked, how can one family go through all of this? And it's very devastating to see if families do go through this, because it does happen. It's not that these things do not happen.
Yeah, I suppose the fact that we live in a country with high levels of violent crimes as a start also plays into what you've just said.
Absolutely. On a daily basis, we are so confronted of different levels of risk. And at no point, as much as a person want to, can always determine or protect you against these things. And that is why we provide insurance solutions, is to make any individual independent of such a loss at that point of time. And very important that you have the relevant solutions in place to keep you intact after such an event.
I mean, given the details around this particular case, do you reckon there is room, though, in the sector for more stringent checks and balances? I'm not sure what they would even look like, but certainly a way of tightening the process.
Michelle, I think, taking the past couple of years, the whole industry has gone and still going through a range of transformation on legislation, processes, and what the end consumer are experiencing. And a lot of that has been taken into account with your treating customer fairly legislation. And I think, a lot of work has been done this past couple of years, and our industry has really become a very professional one. So I think the processes that's currently in place, should be sufficient not to have a situation like this. I suppose a person will always have, room for these types of events. But I think in general, the necessary processes is in place for these things not to happen.
All right, Danie van Niekerk, thanks very much for your time indeed, giving us some interesting perspective there on the shocking details around the case involving Rosemary Ndlovu, the former Tembisa police constable. She's on trial for the murder of 6 of her relatives, for which she's accused of hiring hitmen in order to claim over R1 million in insurance policies, some 1.3 million rand. Danie, Niekerk, Executive Head of Financial Services at the Indwe Group.